Good morrow. Issue 121 features the latest in a long line of team-ups between Spider-Man and the Human Torch, both in Marvel Team-Up and in Spidey's solo titles. They take on the Speed Demon, and, as the cover says, they are assisted by a mystery hero. We could take a look at it, but that mystery hero is the issue. He is Leapfrog, and this is his debut appearance. He's stupid, and I'm not going to waste time on any comic that features him. So instead we move on to issue 122 and our next guest star, Man-Thing. Man-Thing is an odd character. Whenever I see him on the cover of a comic, I always think, oh, Man-Thing, boring. But he has a strange knack of appearing in good issues. Let's see if that's the case today, as our regular creative team of J.M. DeMatteis and Kerry Gamble bring us a tale of a simple twist of fate. Well, page 1 is certainly a good beginning to the issue. We join Man-Thing in his Florida swamp home, where he guards the Nexus of Realities, a kind of interdimensional door that opens randomly. It opens now, and a man who is something of a modern-day wizard steps through it. He looks rather bedraggled, and he recognises in Man-Thing a similarly troubled soul. He introduces himself to a Man-Thing that literally couldn't care less, and explains to him his backstory. His name is Ian Fate, born in England, raised in America, and a journalist by trade. He idolised his wife and child, but they were killed by a professional hitman who'd been hired by a mob boss who had got sick and tired of Ian Fate's interfering. As a result, he longed for revenge. To begin his road to vengeance, he started to study the black arts. Why the black arts? Well, that is because the man who killed his wife and child went on to become the mystic superhero Devil Slayer. Eventually, he tracked Devil Slayer down, but Devil Slayer was too cowardly to face him alone. So he and the rest of his team, the Defenders, battled Ian Fate. Well, that's his version of the story anyway. We do have another version of the story though, because the battle that he's talking about occurred in Defenders issue 104. There is some truth in what he says, because Devil Slayer himself gives us a bit of his origin story. He says that having left the army, he did indeed become a hired hitman, and he did work for the mob, but he reconciled what he was doing by considering the fact that the people he was now offing were bad people themselves. But on one of the jobs, he had been lied to. He was told that he was eliminating a worthless informer. In reality, it was the home of journalist Ian Fate. And fate itself took a hand as his wife and child got into his car before the journalist did, resulting in them being the ones to die. As a result, the Devil Slayer put his days of killing behind him, although he never forgave himself. And now we see that Fate's bid for vengeance has led him to kidnap Devil Slayer's wife. We also see a bit more of Fate's background. We see that he did indeed study the mystical arts under an exiled Tibetan seer. But once that seer discovered Fate's dark purpose, Fate killed him. Interestingly, we do see a picture of that priest lying unconscious underneath Fate's hand in the issue of Marvel Team-Up, but it doesn't explain what's happened. Devil Slayer and the rest of the Defenders track down Fate, and they battle him and his horde of hellish demons in order to save the day. Although it is something of a hollow victory, because it turns out that Fate hadn't kidnapped Devil Slayer's wife. Instead, he had kidnapped a heroin addict who Devil Slayer was trying to help. And actually, that heroin addict is killed during the battle. Rather unusually, Wonder Man pulls no punches in telling Devil Slayer that it is entirely his fault that his friend was dead, and not actually down to Fate at all. Now, back in Marvel Team-Up, we're told that after that battle, the Defenders tried to get Ian Fate some help to mend his broken mind. He tells Man-Thing this and kind of takes Man-Thing under his wing, something which Man-Thing is happy to go along with. And Fate says to him that together they will set mankind free. Oh no, not this again. We had something similar in issue 5 of Giant-Sized Spider-Man, where the Lizard was claiming that with the help of the Man-Thing he would take over the world. Now we've got Ian Fate saying that with the help of the Man-Thing, he can set the whole of mankind free. How? It was never explained then. It's not explained now. How could a shambling, unthinking, unfeeling mound such as Man-Thing help these characters carry out their global plans? I have no idea. Meanwhile, at the offices of the Daily Bugle, we have a rather touching moment of social commentary, as Peter Parker has taken it upon himself to carry out a photo study on the aged. This is because Aunt May and a few of her friends will soon be leaving the Restwell nursing home to have a stab at living life on their own, supporting themselves. And he says that not everybody who is old gets that opportunity. Robbie Robertson thinks the shots are fantastic stuff. And you know what? Even Jonah Jameson thinks they're great. As Peter leaves with a surprisingly large paycheck, he comes across two interesting characters. Of course, we know who they are, and Ian Fate asks Peter for directions to the Daily Bugle building. I've got to say, I actually think that this pairing look quite cool. I would read a comic book series about these two characters. Mind you, Peter isn't quite so keen because his spider sense is tingling. It turns out that Fate knows Jonah from his days of being a journalist, and he thinks that Jonah can help him send out a more positive message to mankind rather than just feeding society's negativity. I still don't really know how Man-Thing is going to help with all this. Oh, speaking of which, Man-Thing is now revealed. And of course, in being revealed, the staff of the Daily Bugle are terrified at what they see. And that, fear, is the single emotion that Man-Thing loathes above all others. He reaches out to one of the sources of that fear, because whatever knows fear burns at the Man-Thing's touch. I've never understood this. I've never understood the benefit of Man-Thing's powers. If only baddies were afraid of him, that would make sense, because then, great, he burns the baddies. But he looks terrifying, so everybody, good and bad, is scared of him, unless they already know him, like Spider-Man does. So why would he have a power that meant that he would burn good people? And he doesn't just ignore the good people that are scared by him, he is drawn towards them, he's impelled to touch them, to burn them. It makes no sense. Also, I've said in the past how the Hulk must have been quite a difficult character to write for, in the days when he would only ever say things like Hulk smash, Hulk angry, Hulk tired. Man-Thing must have taken that to the next level. It must have been very difficult for people to write a character that not only didn't speak, but didn't think or even feel. By the way, Spider-Man followed up on his spider sense. And looking through the window, he sees Fate punch Jonah, because Jonah isn't going to go along with his scheme. This prompts Spider-Man to intervene, although Fate now turns his attention and his power onto the wall-crawler. This is because in his broken state, Fate sees Spider-Man as being no different to Devil Slayer, the man who killed his family. Fate's power is actually beyond Spider-Man. However, Man-Thing reacts to the dark emotions bubbling up within Fate and grabs him. Fate is now fearful, and we know what that means. Now Spidey leaps at the Man-Thing to pull him off of Fate. He succeeds, but the pair of them go through the wall and plummet to the ground below. Spidey manages to swing free at the last moment, but Man-Thing hits the pavement. But he quickly recovers and turns on the fearful bystanders. Spidey can't let this happen. He must stop the Man-Thing at all costs. And actually, we get a really good fight between the two. Man-Thing slams him into the pavement. Spidey tries to web him up, but it doesn't work. And then Man-Thing launches Spidey into the side of a bus, knocking the wind out of him. Back in the office, Jonah tries to talk sense to Ian. He points out that he understands that Ian is hurt over what happened to his family. But sometimes hurt can blind you to all the good things in the world. And what would his wife think of what Ian had become, of what Ian was now doing? Spidey has recovered enough to rejoin the fight against Man-Thing, and he actually pounds Man-Thing into something of a puddle. And it's at that point that fate turns up, because Jonah's talk did get through to him. He realises the consequences of his actions, and he realises that he shouldn't have brought Man-Thing to New York. And he then uses his power to transport him and Man-Thing back to the Florida swamps. And Spidey, staggering away from that brutal fight, collapses, exhausted. Spidey spends issue 123 recovering in hospital, a task that isn't helped by a confrontation with Solar. Luckily, he has help. By issue 124, a really good comic that we've looked at before, he is back to full health. Issue 125 featured Tigra, a character that Marvel was still struggling to establish after a short-lived solo series in the 70s, and after being an Avenger for all of 6 issues about a year before this appearance. The next issue was one of those occasional split books that Marvel Team Up produced. It featured both a Spider-Man and Hulk team-up, and also a pairing of Power Man with the Son of Satan. What is especially interesting here is that the Spider-Man Hulk story had originally been released on its own as a free insert in copies of the Chicago Tribune newspaper in 1980. The exact same story with the exact same script by Jim Shooter is reproduced here, but with totally different artwork. I don't own a copy of the original. Yes, I know, I'm rubbish. And I can't find out online who the original artist was, but the new art was provided by Tomoyuki Takanaka. Was he the original artist? Why was it redrawn? I have no idea. Issue 127 sees the Watcher do his usual trick of not getting involved to save the life of a granddaughter of one of Aunt May's old folks' home residents. And issue 128, look at it. The contents are better than the cover. How could they not be? But if you want to see them, then you'll have to check out my Craven's Last Hunt review. Now you're interested, huh? And now, just as you were thinking, are we going to look at any more comics at all today, we come to a kind of two-parter. The early 80s were an interesting time for the Vision and Scarlet Witch. In 1981 they left the Avengers, and they had their first limited series the following year. In 1983 they rejoined the Avengers, before leaving again in 1985 after the Vision tried to take over the world. They then embarked on a second, longer limited series. In between their first limited series and rejoining Earth's Mightiest Heroes, they teamed up with the Webhead, beginning with issue 129. It's night time. The Scarlet Witch is asleep, but the Vision cannot rest. A power that he cannot explain is drawing him away from his home and towards an abandoned village, to a particular house in the abandoned village. And there, in the basement, he finds rooms covered with circuitry and computers. He encounters and fights an incredible creature, and he sees something even more amazing. Peter Parker is on assignment with one of the Bugle's elder statesmen, a reporter called Andy Porcellito. They are visiting what is normally a sleepy town, but at the moment it's actually the home ground of a serial killer. That got dark quickly, didn't it? They visit the local sheriff's office, where the lawmen believe they've got the suspect for the serial killings locked up. One of the cops is an old friend of Paunch's, and he shows the two reporters to the cell containing the suspect. Now the reporter, Paunch, is a few months off of retirement, and he wants to go out with the biggest story of his career. Oh no, a few months out from retirement. He's not going to make it, is he? Well, his friend shows them to the suspect. It seems to be an open and shut case. The suspect was found near the scene of the murder, and he even had the murder weapon in his hand at the time. However, Paunch has been doing this job for a very long time, and he isn't so sure. He has a feeling that the suspect is innocent. You remember the Vision saw something incredible? Well, that thing was Mark Twain. Yes, arguably America's greatest novelist is there, along with Abraham Lincoln, Shakespeare, Confucius. Although, of course, they aren't there. These are all androids. They were constructed by the Mad Thinker, but after he was defeated by Captain America in issue 269 of his comic, they were left without a leader. They want to integrate into human society, but don't know how to. So it was them who sent out the signal that drew the Vision to them. because they believe that the Vision, with his unique perspective on life, walking that borderline between android and human, can help them learn how to live with people. The Vision agrees. Meanwhile, the murder suspect suddenly stands up and breaks free from his cell effortlessly, and one of the police officers is equally effortlessly thrown out of his way. Peter and Paunch are discussing the case when Paunch realises that he's seen the suspect somewhere before, and he even knows his name: Dostoevsky. The suspect bears an uncanny resemblance to the Russian great. They don't really know what this means though, and at that point, outside the window, they see that the sheriff has rounded up a posse to go and search for the escapee. Paunch talks the sheriff into letting him and Peter tag along, although Peter quickly slips away and into his alternative clothing. Peter feels that if the mob find the suspect before he does, there'll be trouble. So he hopes that he finds him first. And in fact, he's in luck, because before too long he does stumble across him. He follows him, and the suspect leads him to the house where Mark Twain, the other greats from history, and the Vision are. As you all worked out pretty much instantly, I'm sure, Dostoevsky is another one of the androids. He was called to that house by the same signal that drew the Vision to it. Before too long, the posse turn up and start shooting at the androids. Spider-Man wants to get involved, but he knows that if he were to suddenly turn up in this sleepy little town, shortly after Peter Parker, who was supposed to be there, had gone missing, he would massively jeopardise his secret identity. Therefore, it's down to the Vision to protect the androids. And he does well. That is, until one of the officers picks up a gizmo that Mark Twain had used earlier on to power down Dostoevsky, and he uses that on the Vision, and it works, taking him out of the action. The other androids now, in desperation, call forth their own protector, the creature from earlier on, who is also an android, and he goes by the name of Alpha. With that monster causing havoc, Spidey feels he cannot sit idly by anymore, and he joins the fray. None of the police officers there really comment on this, but Paunch is no fool, and straight away he finds it curious that Spider-Man has turned up. While the fight continues, the androids now have time to gather their thoughts, but they don't know what to do. Then the answer is given to them. The police officer that was Paunch's old friend from many, many years back tells them to kill everyone. He says that all people are alike. He's seen it in the city, the corruption, the evil, the decay, and he moved to the sticks thinking that he could get away from it, but the people there were just as bad. He says they don't deserve to live. Yes, he is the serial killer. He soon admits this and takes Punchlino hostage, holding a knife to his throat. We all knew this was on the cards, didn't we? Spider-Man at this point says to him that maybe if he, Spider-Man, can beat that massive android, Alpha, maybe that will prove to the serial killer cop that it is worth fighting for good things in this world. And if he does that, will he let Punchlito go? The cop agrees, and we are treated to a great brawl between Spidey and Alpha. It goes on for a few pages, and despite great efforts on the part of Spidey, he loses. We then get a bit of an explanation from the cop as to what happened where Dostoevsky is concerned. He says that he thought he had it made when he stumbled across that drifter nearby the last murder scene. The drifter innocently picked up the knife that he had left behind and got himself arrested, he says. He also says that he's glad that everybody knows that it was actually him now, because now they will understand the importance of what he's doing. But while he's making this speech, he doesn't notice that behind him the Vision is rising from the ground, and it doesn't take much for the Vision to put him out of action. It's now the Vision's turn to give a little speech, as he says something about the monsters are within us and we can defeat them as long as we dare but try. He also explains that yes, that little gizmo did put him out of action, but he eventually recovered, although he thought it best not to interfere until absolutely necessary. Yeah, I'm sure Spidey appreciated that while he got his head pummeled. The androids now turn to walk off back to their house. They are confused about everything that's happened, and they're not sure that they can integrate into society just yet. They need to search to find answers. And the Vision says, "May you find the answers you seek, and may they be good ones." And Spidey says, "Let's hope we all find those answers, Vision. Let's hope we find them fast." Not really sure what that's supposed to mean. I think he just felt pressured into saying something deep and meaningful. But that is the end of the story, isn't it? Well, it certainly looks like it, but both Spidey and the Vision return in issue 130, along with Mrs. Vision. One person who isn't returning is artist Kerry Gamble, whose run as the regular penciler on the title has now come to an end. Instead, we have brother of Big John, Sal Buscema, providing breakdowns. The Scarlet Witch was actually asleep for the whole of the last issue, but now she awakes with a start from an awful dream. Outside her room, she sees the Vision and explains to him the terrible dream she had, where she herself was hunting him down and killed him. He comforts her and takes her out into the garden for some fresh air. But whilst out there, the shadows from the trees seem to come alive. They reach towards her, overwhelm her, and she falls unconscious. We then see that the Vision isn't the Vision at all, but the villain Necrodamus in disguise. Meanwhile, Spider-Man is still recovering from his battle with the android Alpha, and in his tired and beaten state, he slips up as he refers to Mr. Punchlito by name, something which the reporter doesn't miss. Spidey quickly makes his excuses and swings off, but as he does so, Punch calls out to him that if he sees Peter Parker, he should tell him that Punch thinks he's found that big story he was looking for, the one that would make his name forever, and nothing is going to stop him from printing it. Peter's spider sense is tingling, and not just because of his concerns about his secret identity being blown. A large, unnatural storm cloud has appeared, and it's firing down lightning bolts onto the Vision. Spidey swings in, taking Punchlito out of the line of fire. And now Necrodamus reveals himself with the unconscious Scarlet Witch to the Vision. The Vision doesn't know him, which is handy for us because it gives Necrodamus the chance to explain his backstory. He has been seen before in the Marvel Universe. He battled the Defenders in issue 1 of their series after trying to take over Prince Namor's body, and then after trying to steal the soul of the witch Agatha Harkness, he was defeated by the Scarlet Witch in issue 128 of the Avengers. That is where his hatred for the Scarlet Witch comes from, but that gave him the idea to hold her hostage, unless the Vision agreed to give Necrodamus control of his body, the perfect body, so Necrodamus thinks. The Vision agrees, feeling he doesn't have much of a choice. The body swap occurs, shortly after which the Vision, which of course is now Necrodamus in the Vision's body, destroys his old body. The sight of this drives Spidey crazy, as he thinks that the Vision's soul was in Necrodamus's old body. He is quickly corrected though, as Necrodamus explains that as androids don't have souls, that can't happen. And in fact, what he has done is simply wiped the Vision's programming. He then uses the Vision's old intangible hand trick to knock Spider-Man unconscious. Crikey, the cover wasn't exaggerating, was it? Shortly after that, the Vision floats away because he wants to test his newfound powers and show the world what he's capable of. Both the Scarlet Witch and Spider-Man regain consciousness, and Wanda comes to the heartbreaking realization that the only way to stop Necrodamus is to destroy the Vision's body. Ooh, that's a tall order. Necrodamus is on the rampage in a nearby city, and Punchlito drives both Spider-Man and the Scarlet Witch there, because, as she points out, neither of them can fly. The Scarlet Witch can fly, can't she? Surely. Nonetheless, they soon arrive at the scene of the action, with Punchlito still hinting that he knows Spider-Man's secret identity. Spidey has no time for that though, and he and Wanda quickly get out of the car and run to attack the Vision. However, of course, the Vision is a big hitter, and Spider-Man is no match for him. So shortly after he is knocked out of the way, it's down to the Scarlet Witch to take him on. And... oh. What's that? That's weird. It looks like, I don't know, like a narrow car tyre or something that's been thrown at the Vision. But there's no context for it. Spider-Man's just been knocked away, so it wasn't him that threw it. Punchlito, well, we see him shortly after hiding behind some rubble. It's just odd. Just came out of nowhere. Speaking of Punchlito, he has a moment to shine, to be the hero, as he swoops in and saves a puppy from danger. He really is pushing this whole 3 months from retirement thing, isn't he? Spidey then has another go at the Vision, but he still is no match, And in fact, the Vision could have finished the fight already, but he says that he is purposely dragging it out just to have more fun. And so it's down to the Scarlet Witch, who finally fires a hex bolt at the Vision, which deactivates him. Or does it? It turns out that she had unconsciously held back, not wishing to hurt the body of her husband. He, however, has no such compunction, as he does what he said he should have done hours ago: strangle the life out of her with her beloved husband's own hands. It turns out, however, that no matter how much he wants to kill the Scarlet Witch, he just can't. Something is holding him back. Punchlito knows what. It's the Vision. He says that somehow he's still alive inside him, and he'll never let him take his wife's life. Necrodamus says fine. It may stop him killing the Scarlet Witch, but it won't stop him killing Punchlito. Here we go, everyone. This is the moment we've all known was coming. Or is it? Because Spider-Man has just enough energy left to take on the Vision one more time. He's going to keep hitting the Vision and hitting him until he can't hit anymore. And if the Vision is in there, he needs to fight too. Fight like never before. And fight he does, driving out Necrodamus' spirit. A spirit which briefly possesses that little puppy from earlier on, but then Necrodamus says no, he will not view life through the eyes of an animal. His spirit leaves the puppy, but his time has run out, and he now dissipates into the air. The Vision is back in control, and Wanda, rendered unconscious at the hands of Necrodamus, is back in the land of the living. The Vision explains that although Necrodamus tried to wipe his programming, there was some vague consciousness that clung on. And when she fired the Vision's body with her hex bolt, rather than kill him, it fired that consciousness, fed it even more. It doesn't make sense to him, but that is what drove him on and helped him push out Necrodamus' spirit. There is no logic to it, he says. She says there is more than logic at play here. And that strange feeling, that vague consciousness, that was his soul. Later on, we see Punchlito, who, by the way, appears to have adopted that puppy, in his hotel room, and Peter Parker is there. Punchlito is packing, because he is now taking early retirement, and he has filed the last of his stories, neither of which are the big story that he was so excited about. Peter asks why. He says, let's pretend that his big story was something like knowing Spider-Man's real identity. The thing is, now he has seen Spider-Man up close in action. What he saw was a brave, tireless, selfless young man, a real, honest-to-God hero. He says the world needs heroes much more than he needs a Pulitzer Prize. And with that, he offers to go and buy Peter a beer. And Peter says, Mr. Punchlito, this one's on me. I think we need to slow down. I've just realised we only have 20 more issues before the series comes to an end.